Alright, hello. This is going to be a quick tutorial on instanced static mesh components and using them in a blueprint to create a modular house instead of having to manually place every component in the level editor. So let's go ahead and make a new project to get started with. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is make a new folder. I'm just calling it ISMC. Then we are going to take the FBX files that I have available for download in the description, and we're going to import these into the new folder. And everything looks good there. Don't need to import materials. Import all. Then what I'm going to do is create a material real quick. Hold 3, nope, hold V and left click, plug that 4 parameter vector into the base color and name it base color. Save this one, go ahead and close it out, right click it, create a material instance. So MI, and then we'll do this so that we have 5 instances. Alright, now we've got 5 material instances. What I'm going to do is just give each one a unique color so that it's easier to differentiate the pieces of the house that we're putting together. So there's one color. They don't have to be anything specific. They're just going to, their only purpose is to more easily visually differentiate between the components as we put together this blueprint. Alright, hit Control S, save all of those. We've got our material instances ready, and I'm just going to open each one of these meshes one at a time and apply the different colors so they all have nice unique colors to them. And hit Control S again to save all of those. And oh boy, those are big. That's fine. There's my scale. Just make this nice and big so we have a clear ground plane that we're working with. And that is annoying, so I'm going to go ahead and add a skylight so that we can see without horrible black shadows everywhere. Alright, so now we've got all of these different components, and you can build a house. You know, you've got little dormer bits that you can add, and windows. You can add multiple floors, but it's a pain in the ass to combine all of this stuff in the editor, especially if you're going to have multiple houses in your level built with the same modular asset set. So the whole idea here is we're going to take and make a blueprint that will automatically build our house for us in a single entity with, you know, a few checkboxes that we can manually control where everything's placed. So let's go ahead and delete all of these and get started. Alright, so we're going to create a new blueprint. Class actor. I'm going to name it B house. We'll go ahead and open it up and search for static mesh, which is a tongue twister. And then we're going to create 5 of these for each of the components. So alright, then we're going to assign the static mesh. So now we've got all these loaded up. go ahead and go to the construction script. This is where most of our stuff is going to be put together here. Click on the foundation, then right click, instance, add instance of the foundation. This is our first step. This is going to place our foundation. So if we drag this into the world, we've got a foundation now. And that's placing the object at its origin, however it was exported from the 3D modeling program. Whatever. All right. So now we need a for loop. And we need a variable to drive that floor loop, which is going to be floors. And that's going to be an integer. So we drag this in here. First index is going to be 0. And with the loop body, the middle, that's going to be each floor of our house is the middle model. And then we search for instance again. Add instance of the middle. And we'll break these, split the pins. Oh, and we want to have the floors variable editable from the details panel in the level editor. So we'll do that, compile and save. And we need to look at the dimensions of our middle section. It is 400 Unreal units tall, and we need to know that for this step because we're going to take the index and we are going to multiply it, not with a vector, we're going to multiply it by its height in Unreal units. And I need to split this pin. We're going to multiply the z-axis so that on every index of the for loop it's going to multiply 400. And I set the first index to 1, so 0 is no floors. It's going to be the roof directly on top of the foundation piece. So we'll compile this and save it and make sure that everything is working here. Click on this and slide our floors. Okay, our floors are being added to the one beneath it. And then if we go to 0, it takes all of the floors away and it just leaves the foundation. Alright, so let's go back in here, and now to add our roof we need to click on the roof instance, come off of the completed arrow of the for loop node, search for instance. We're going to add an instance of the roof. We're going to split this pin, and we're going to use this same math to get our z-axis offset for our roof as well. So if we compile and save this, we should have a roof sitting on top. And it should move as we add floors. Excellent. Alright, so at the beginning of the video I forgot to include a couple of variations on the dormer and the door so that I can show you guys how I was switching between two different styles. So I'll go ahead and import those now and create material instances for them. These will both be included in the zip file in the description. I'm just going to copy and paste two more, one for the second dormer and one for the second door. And then we will apply them to the meshes. Alright, now we're ready to get back into the blueprinting. Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to add to the process here is the door style. And to do that, I want to add a variable to change the style of door. So door style. And we're going to change this to an integer and make it visible so that we can edit it from the details. And then we're going to add an switch on integer node, which is going to be driven by our door style. And we need to add a sequence up here. We're going to be adding a lot of nodes to the sequence because each floor is going to have its own branch off of this main sequence here. So this will be our first addition, and we're going to then add an instance mesh for the door and assign the door mesh here. Highlight the door, right click, instance. We're going to add an instance of the door. We're going to add a pin to this, add a second pin to this, and we're going to do this. We are going to split this, and we're going to split the transform location, and we're going to come down here. Once we compile it and save it, we have a door at the origin point, and we want to bring the door out to the skinny end here. So we'll look at the foundation, and it is 755 units long, so that'll give us a rough idea. We need half of that number, so in the x-axis we're going to go 375 unreal units, and okay, so we need negative 375 to get it to the other direction here. Compile and save it. Now we need to rotate it. Rotate it 90 degrees, compile and save. And now we can fine tune it. Alright, so now we have a door. And I need to add one more mesh. Alright, so we have our second door imported in. We've got door and door 2. So we'll go back into our blueprint, and we've got our door style. Door style 0 is going to be the default, and what we can do is add a component instance mesh, door 2, set this to door 2, highlight it, right click, instance. We're going to add an instance to door 2, move this up a little bit, and then if we have selected 1 in the details panel, we're going to get a second door, and we'll just use the same numbers from above, negative 360 on the x-axis and 0 and 0, and compile and save. And then if we go over here on our door style and we switch it to 1, we have a rotated door. Oh, that's the problem. So we need to change the door back to door 1. Rotation to 90. Compile it and save it. And now we can switch between door styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start collapsing each one of these into a macro to save space. So this is the door macro, because if we don't do this it'll get crazy, and I will leave these out in the open. This is our foundation. Those notated so that we can keep this somewhat tidy. If we ever want to go back and make adjustments to stuff, we know what things do without having to decipher all of this crap. Door is going to be the only component on the foundation, as per the demonstration piece that I had made the other day, which will be linked to in this video. All of the rest of the decorations are going to be on the floors and the roof module themselves. Go ahead and get started placing the windows. And to do this, we're going to start with a check of how many floors there are. So we'll get the number of floors, and we're going to do a greater than. And if this floor is greater than 0, meaning there are more than one floor, we're going to move on to populating the first floor windows. So I'm going to make a macro out of this because we will use this little check for every floor. So we'll collapse it to a macro. We're going to go into it. On the input, we're going to add an input. It is going to be an integer, and it is going to be named floor check, and we're going to route that to our comparison of the floors variable. And what this will let us do, add an output. So if it's true, it's going to go to the output. Compile it for good measure, and I need to rename this. This is the macro that we're in right now. This is our floor check macro. We'll close this. So now we've got a floor check macro, and what attaching the input integer to the comparison allows us to do is to manually enter every time we copy this macro. So for this one, we're going to check if we are greater than 0 floors. And we are going to highlight window, instance a window. And this process is going to be very similar to the door process. So we'll split our pin. So we've got our logic to check and make sure that the first floor exists. And we've got an instance of the window, so we'll compile and save. It's placing it at the 0, 0, 0 origin, and it should be right there, which is perfect. So now what we're going to do is our Z location we know needs to be 400 because that's the height of each floor. And then our X and Y axis we will set, let's see, so we'll check our house middle section. It is 600 wide, so we need to go 300 in the y-axis and see where that gets us. That gets us out here, and 400 is not quite enough, so we'll bump it up to 450. 450 is good enough for this demonstration. And I want to have two windows on the wide sides and one window on the narrow side. So our x-axis is going to have, let's say, a offset of 200 units. So that moves that over. All right, so actually, let's do negative 200 so that we can kind of start, when these are all placed, they'll be in a counterclockwise fashion in the options, which we'll get to in just a moment here. So that gets us our first window. Now we need a variable. Actually, we'll make all of them at once for the first floor. So we're going to do first win And then we are going to make 6 of these, and we're going to use that naming convention: first win A, first win B, etc. And then we're going to make all of these public so that we can edit them. And what we're going to do now is we're going to break this by Alt left click, and then we're going to do a hold down B, left click, get a branch, and it's going to be, our branch is going to be driven by first floor window A is the condition. So we'll plug that in, and then if that condition is true, we're going to add our instance. So we'll move this out of the way down here, because we are going to make several copies of this. What we're going to do, actually I'll move this back up here, because that'll stay right there. So we're going to make 6 copies of this for each of the 6 windows. And then we're going to select all of the booleans except for the first one, delete those, and then we'll drag in B, C, D, E. Now that we have all of our branches set up, we need to connect all of these. And we want all of these to execute, whether each branch is true or false. We want the next one to continue all the way down the line. So what we're going to do is, if it's true, we're going to go here, and if it's true, we're going to go to here. If it's false, we're going to go to the next branch, and if it's instanced, we're going to the next branch. So whether it's true or false, it's going to the next node, and we'll do that with all of these. All right, so now we have all of these set up. We've got we'll have 6 Windows instances, but they're all false now. So, but when we highlight our blueprint object in the world, we can see we have 6 options over here in the details panel for window A, B, C, D, E, F, and each one of those will turn on manually based on that option. But you see we're only getting 1 window, and that's because we have 6 instances in the exact same world space. So we need to go through and we need to set up where these windows are going to be instanced. So this side, we're going to have 2 windows on. We've got a X offset of 200, negative 200. So we're going to go positive 200 for the second one. And if we compile and save that, now we've got 2. Now we need to, because we're going sequentially, we want to start with this first window being A, and then B, C, D, E, F moving in a counterclockwise direction, just to make it easier when we're actually using this blueprint to design our levels. We want this third one to be the window on the narrow side of the back of the building. So we need to rotate it 270 degrees, and we need to move it backwards even more, 375, like the door on the front, and then we want to have an offset of 0 so that it's centered up. So we'll see where that puts us. That is not correct. So an offset of 0y and 375x rather. Okay, so we want to get it sticking out just a little bit more so that it looks like the ones on the sides. And a lot of the setup for a blueprint like this is going to be just making sure all of your stuff is aligned the way that you want it so that it looks correct in your world space. All right, so now we've got the first 3 set up. The next 2 are going to be exactly like these 2 windows, but they're going to be mirrored from these 2. So we've got 200x, 300y. So we're going to go negative 200x, negative 300y, and we're going to rotate them 180 degrees. So we compile and save it, And we have our first window over here. And then this is window D. This is the fourth window. That'll be right here. So we want to do the same thing, 180-degree rotation in the Z-axis, negative 200 in the X, and negative 300 in the Y. Oh, positive 200 in the X, negative 300 in the Y. All right, and now we need our window on the front, which is going to be a mirror image of the third window on the back, which is so it's going to be negative 395, 0, and the same Z offset, but rotated 90 degrees instead of 270. So 90-degree rotation, negative 395 in the X-axis, and 0 in the Y. We compile it and save it, and we've got our 6 windows. And these 6 windows are all adjustable, like so. Easy peasy. Alright, so now let's add some dormers to the first floor. And the process is going to be very similar. Actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and collapse this clump down to a macro and call that first floor windows. We'll come in here and add an output, and then do the same thing we did between each one of these nodes and go from the false of the last branch and from the last add instance output. Now all our windows are in a nice tidy little macro package, and we're ready to start adding some dormers which will operate off of that same floor check logic. So we'll go ahead and we will go to our dormer, right click, instance, add instance dormer. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have 3 variables like we had for our windows, 3 booleans, and they're just going to be on off for the left side, the right side, and the front. We're not going to have a dormer on the back. So we'll have first dormer front, first dormer left, and first dormer right. Make all of these visible, and B and left click to load a branch in, and drag our first dormer front as the condition, and we will go from the windows to the branch. We'll move this out of the way. We will split these pins, move this back down here so it's nice and out of the way. Move all of this into some open space. If true, we'll go to this, and we'll make 3 copies of this for each of the 3 dormers that we will be adding. And we will check real quick to make sure that our dormer is spawning in at the origin, the 000 of the blueprint. Boolean is not checked. So there's a dormer once we check our option for it in the details panel. And we'll go ahead and click all 3 of these so that they're on while we're working on them. And we need to do the same thing we did with the windows and move them out to the surfaces that they're going to be protruding from. So we'll go back into here, and this one's going to be on the front and rotated 90 degrees. And there's our front dormer. And that's good enough for the example. Now we need a dormer on the left and on the right. We're going to split this structure for that an upcoming feature we're going to add to the dormers. Negative 200 in the X and 450 in the Z. And got to connect these. So we'll do the same thing that we did the last time, where from the instance to the branch and from the faults to the branch of the next node. Now it should work. Okay. We've also got to change out these booleans to the dormer left boolean and the dormer right boolean. Space these out just a tad. That is wrong. We don't want to go in the X. We want to go in the Y-axis. And we need just a little bit more. Bump that up to 250. And even more. Go ahead and make this window smaller. Make 350 is too much. 300 is good. So we need to go negative 300 and 450 on the Z for the other side, and a rotation of 180 degrees. And that gives us a nice mirror image. Because we're only going to have one dormer on each side, we may as well make the positioning of the side dormers adjustable. So what we will do is we're going to add two more variables. We're going to call this first dormer left position, and change this to an integer. And then first dormer right position, both integers, both publicly editable. And then we'll drag this up to sit just beneath the left and just beneath the right, so that they're together in the details panel when we are working with them in the world. And we're going to take these. So we will take this, the dormer right position, drag it out to the dormer right. We're going to get it. And then we are going to drag this to the transform location. X-axis, so that it will slide along the length of the building. And we'll do the same thing with the left side dormer. And if we compile and save this, we should then be able to take these new boxes that we've got and slide these to the position that we want along the wall. And then if you want to add extra logic, you could probably take care of these overlapped windows in blueprint logic, but I'm just manually checking and unchecking them at the moment. That's how I've got my other blueprint set up. So now we've got dormers. All right, so let's pop this blueprint back open, and that's basically the process for all of the subsequent floors. And I'm going to go ahead and basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the contents of each of these with appropriate Z offsets for each subsequent floor to the second floor, third floor, fourth floor, etc., and make second, third, and fourth floor versions of all of these variables on this side, so that we have controls for them in the blueprint detail panel. And I'm going to probably time lapse it so you can see what I'm doing, but not have to sit through 20 minutes of tedious work. So here goes that. All right, so there are now 3 floors that are set up for all the decorations. We've got all of the options here in the details panel. Just turn off dormers and windows, adjust the positions to wherever you'd like them to be, turn off windows if they get in the way, all that kind of fun stuff. And then, like the door, where it's set up on a switch on int node to go to different instances of the door, you can do that for each and every component. The windows can be done that way, the dormers can be done that way. It's just adding in a alternative mesh for them, a second option, adding a variable to switch from, and then adding a integer switch to actually make the switch in the blueprint. And the cool thing with the logic check that we did, the floor check logic, the cool thing with that is that all of these are checked now. So we've got windows and dormers all the way up to the 3rd floor. But if you copy this blueprint in the world and say you don't want it to be 3 stories tall, you only want it to be 2 stories tall, as you remove the stories, it, because of that branch check on the floor variable, it will not, it won't instance those meshes if that check fails. So that's pretty neat. It just makes this blueprint that much more handy when you're, you know, designing a level and just want to work quickly with a basically like an asset pack that you can put together yourself and just iterate out a level with a pretty high degree of speed. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to switch over to my other project to show you some of the alternative switching methods in action. Okay, so here in the other project, the one that I showcased the other day, that inspired some requests for tutorials, this one I have alternative dormer styles and some extra decorations on the base that I can change out. And for the dormers, let's see, all that takes is just extra instancing nodes and integer switches in the blueprint like I had for the door in the demo. So like that, I can just switch and it changes which mesh is being instanced. So that's, it's pretty neat. So you can basically, you can take and make a just a basic asset set of modular pieces for a house and combine them, and using this method you could change out the middle sections to different styles. You could probably, if you're more clever than me, come up with a way to automate the process even further so that you don't have to manually brute force, you know, copy and paste all of the nodes like I was doing. A very lowbrow fashion, you probably take and automate that, streamline it, even add procedural elements so that you can seed out a randomly generated building with this method. But that kind of goes over the basics of how to instance meshes, and more specifically how I instance meshes to come up with this. And that's the basic gist of it. And if anybody has any more clever ways that I should try, or if they see anything that I'm doing that's just completely wrong, let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching.